in this podcast, you're going to learn one of the most valuable lessons that I taught myself, and that was how to cope in life without drinking alcohol. Someone had asked me a few months back about my breakthrough moment, and I wanted to share a really personal story, a really vulnerable story. And that story is about how I stopped drinking alcohol. So today, I'm going to share with you my breakthrough story. And I'm really excited today because I'm here sitting with Fabio. Fabio, man, thanks for doing this with me. Fabio's been my producer for this podcast for the last 2 years, maybe even slightly longer. What has it been? 2.5 years, actually.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, actually more than that.
3
So,
already.
yeah, maybe close to 3 years. Wow, time has flown. So Fabio's been side by side with me on his journey. And I thought, hey, you know, it's weird to just get in front of the camera and speak, but because Fabio has watched and produced all of our podcasts, I asked him if he can come in and just interview me on maybe some of the questions that he even had curiosity about in his journey that I've been on. So Fabio, thank you, man.
I have some.
Yeah, man. You want to jump into it?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do it.
I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful that you reach out and then we could sit out and just have a good conversation.
I'm really thankful that you were willing to do
this.
this.
And that's a hell of the topic. Let's go just jump on in how, when, all the whys. Do you remember when you decided to stop drinking?
Yeah, I think there were a few times that I thought, I mean, I've been thinking about stop the madness for a long time. And I'll even take you back. Like, I think that when I first let everybody know, I did a post on Facebook that I was not going to drink anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't approach it from the perspective of I had a problem. I didn't approach it from,
I see.
you know, like I'm about to lose everything. I'm rock bottom. That was never really a thought process for me when I stopped. But when I think back now, like a year later, I really have realized that it was not the way that I should have been living. And I think there were a lot of moments that I was like, I really got to stop this. But the one moment that really changed everything was I finally realized that no matter how much I drank or how little I drank, there was absolutely no way that I can control how my body responded to it. And by definition, they say if you can't control alcohol or how you feel in it, then you have a problem. And coming to the realization that I truly, like at this point, have to say, this is not the way that I want to live, was big. And so the story goes something similar to this. Like the first time that I really decided that I wasn't going to drink was, it started here. It was, I mean, and there were many hangover times that I was like, I can't live like this anymore. Like but the true like moment of clarity for me was I had been in Washington D.C. for a conference, and I had met with somebody who was helping me build my brand. She was like somebody had hired to build my brand, and I met with her for dinner. And we went to a place where her boyfriend or husband, her significant other, was the chef. And so it was a really cool, really swanky, like, place in DC, like a place to be seen type of place. And because we were there with the chef, he was taking care of us. So they brought out, like, champagne and, you know, caviar. I mean, it was like a really, really high-end dinner. And I probably had 4 glasses of champagne. And then at the end, I topped it off with a Manhattan. And the Manhattan was delicious. It was like an amazing drink, right? It was like, it was so good. And I remember going back to the room at the end of everything and feeling fine. And went to sleep. I was not hungover when I woke up. So I probably had like 5 or 6 drinks or something like that. And then the next day I flew home, and when I flew home, I went to dinner with Tracy, and because remembering the Manhattan I had the night before, I was like, I'm going to get a Manhattan. So I got a Manhattan when we sat down for dinner, and I was like sloshed. I was like slurring. It was our anniversary dinner. We had gone to the restaurant that we initially went on our first date on, and I got a drink, and I was like, we got a drink, and I was slurring, and after one drink, and I realized, and she was so annoyed, she was so mad, it was a first date restaurant. How do you come to this dinner and you can't get your shit together? Was basically like the energy that I was feeling. And it was just like not disgusted, but that's how I felt, right? It's probably more me than her. And we just drove home and didn't say a whole lot. And I was just embarrassed by it. So that was a culmination. I think I started then.
So how long ago was that?
So that was in March of 2023.
Right.
But I officially stopped in August of 2023. So a few months later. So I thought, hey, I'm going to stop. And I did. And then I went to an event in July. And Tracy went with me to the event. And it was in Vegas. And I started having drinks there again. And I remember not really remembering how to get back to my room, and figured out how to get back to my room. And then, because she went home, she went early. She was like, hey, I'm going to go to bed early. And then I was hungover the next day at the event. And I was like, that sucked. I don't want to do this anymore. But I kept drinking. I still, so that was like number two. Number three.
Yeah.
Number three was I went on a trip, a business trip. I did all my meetings, and I went back to the hotel and had a bunch of drinks, and I was super hungover the next day that I woke up late. I was not probably my full self in the next meetings, and I realized I can't be doing this. And so I came back from that trip. You and I did a podcast with a guy named Sean Kaplan.
Was it right after that trip?
Right after that trip. It was probably within that week. Like I think I flew back on Wednesday. We had the Friday the podcast, and he said it so nonchalantly, like, I just stopped drinking. I just stopped, drinking, whatever other vices he had. He said he stopped. And I was like, well, if he can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
And so I just stopped that day. I never had another drink. And I just decided I wasn't going to go back. So that was the day that I decided. That was, I believe it was like, I mean, I don't think I drank, but I think I say like August 1st or something was the day that I stopped.
I see.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that episode that we recorded with Sean. But I know we always interview, and you're already very present to the person that we are interviewing. But I remember that you were paying extra attention for that one.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, because after you guys kept talking when we finished the podcast for a couple minutes, and I was like, man, he usually don't talk that much when he finished a podcast.
Yeah,
I was wondering if it was something like that. I didn't know the back of the story of the first 3 strikes that made you decide it. But I'm sure it was one of the person that inspired you to.
Well, there were 3 people. Let me share this with you. There were 3 people that really inspired me in a way that I probably needed in my life without realizing it. The first was a guy named Ricky Aboud, and Ricky had said that he stopped drinking on New Year's Day because he asked himself, like, why do I want to start the new year hungover? And then never went back to drinking. He didn't realize he was going to stop, but he just decided he was in line for a drink on New Year's Eve and said, wait, why am I going to get hungover or just kick off the next year? Why do we always do this?
Same habit.
I was like, it made so much sense to me. Like, why do we do this?
Yeah.
The second one was Sean in that podcast where he just very, explicitly say he stopped everything. And I was like, well, if he can't do it, why can't I? And then there was another guy, Thomas Bepko, who I thought was just a dude who I sat next to him in an event, and I thought to myself, and this is when I drank, I was like, I can't hang with this dude. This dude's partying on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And he was like, where are we gonna go this time?
I
What are we gonna do?
And
I was like, this guy, like, no, I'm not going anywhere with this dude. This dude is doing stuff that I probably shouldn't be doing. And then one day, he just said, yeah, man, I did a podcast with him, and he said, I haven't had a drink in like 18 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed with how he was able to walk into rooms and be present and have a good time and go to dinners and invite people to go out places and have so much energy without having drinks. I was like, well, if all these guys can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
Why is my entire presence in rooms full of people that I have to have drinks? And so I decided to just stop. I was like, if they can do it, I can do it too. And so I stopped. A year ago, I said I wasn't going to drink, and the results for me have been amazing.
That's amazing. I mean, from the strike one being March and the last one in July, so in those around 4 to 5 months, it was enough to realize, you know what, a change has to be made. When do you remember when was your first drink ever?
Yeah, man. I think I think the first time that I could remember, I was about 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
My brothers were having a party. Maybe, I was 10 years old. My brothers were having a party. They were in high school. And I remember that I saw them all drinking, and I told the brothers I wanted to do everything they did. So I remember
they look like have a good time.
One of their high school friends thought it would be funny to let me drink, and so they were letting me drink like wine coolers or something.
See what happened.
But I don't think I ever stopped from there. Like if I could ever get my hands on it, I was gonna drink. And so I've been, and then I think I even smoked pot even earlier than then. So I have been taking some sort of substance my entire adult life, even before that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So, is it fair to say this is the first time ever you decide to stop drinking, or you have to say that before?
Well, I've done 75 hard 3 times now, and I don't think that I've ever said it out loud, but I think the reason why I did 75 hard was because I wanted to figure out if I could really go 75 days without drinking and function and really understand it. And I was able to do that. So I had already started the ball rolling, maybe subconsciously, without really deciding or knowing that it was going to come to fruition that I would get here. I wanted so badly to be the guy that could drink socially and be cool. I'm just not cool.
Yeah, you know your limits,
I don't know my limits.
You don't know your limits.
Which is why I had to end up here.
Okay.
But I wish I did, man. I wish I did.
All right. Yeah, it sounds fair, though. Did you feel the physical changes at all with the 74 hard? Stop it drinking everything?
Yeah, I mean, yes, with 75 hard, 100%. But I did 75 hard shortly after I stopped drinking. So I stopped drinking the third time I did 75 hard, I had just stopped drinking in August, and I started it in the day after Thanksgiving. So I don't know how many months that is, but like 3 or 4 months. And
so you were about 3 months clean before the 75.
I guess, yeah. Okay. But I was still very foggy.
Yeah.
75 hard was the best thing I did because I feel like I sweated out every demon I had, like every cloud in my head. Everything. It just brought me into one with myself. That process to then, now it was out. Like if I had any question, if there was like a drop of alcohol in my body, I sweated it out during that period. It was probably the best thing I ever did. But yeah, I mean, I noticed big changes in my, like, I could think clearly in a way that I couldn't before.
What do you mean by foggy?
Well, brain fog, I couldn't focus on certain things. Like I remember sitting in this office and just so many things coming at me. And just like almost having to squint because I was like, I can't focus on any one thing. And I just felt like it was cloudy. Like literally, when I think back to who I was, even in the podcast with Sean, I feel like there was fog in the room. I feel like it was a smoky room. I feel like it was hard to see through.
You weren't able to be 100% there.
Ever. Okay. And now it's very clear, very crystal. I think the effects of me going through 75 hard to clear that were big. And every now and again when I feel I just don't feel it in the depths that I was when I was drinking, like the amount of brain fog. Okay. Clarity is just something I can live with now.
That makes a lot of sense. Did you feel any emotional changes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with when you don't drink, and if somebody listening is like, what's the biggest effect is that you now have to feel your feelings. Like I didn't know how to feel my feelings. I didn't know how to, whether whatever was going on in my life was good, I celebrated with a drink. if something in my life was bad, I celebrated with a drink,
Mm-hmm.
or I coped with a drink. If I was stressed, I had a drink.
Mm.
I remember getting home on Fridays and like the entire way home thinking about what am I going to drink, and romanticizing whether it was me pulling a cork out of a bottle of wine or romanticizing the whiskey hitting the ice. It was all those things, but it was just taking up brain space in a way that was not really productive for me. And when I remove all that, so much changed. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing emotionally for me was I had to learn how to understand my feelings. I used to smoke weed every night, legally, because it's legal here.
Yeah, please.
But I would take like just a hit out of a pen just to help me sleep. But really what wasn't to help me sleep, it was to help me cope with my thoughts. Now I sleep like a baby. Like I don't have a problem sleeping because I've now know how to work through my thoughts and know how to cope with them and really like feel
in a really healthy way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like what you said when you stop drinking. When alcohol is taking over your life, you notice that you have to make a change. The way I saw was always, if you need something to feel something, you have a problem.
That's a good point. Yeah,
So,
if you need something to feel something, you have a problem. And
because you just try to avoid, you just try to cope or just put something in front of your feelings or something like that instead of actually take care of business.
well, in a lot of ways, you're right. And I think that it's so socially acceptable
Yes.
but now when I don't do it, I look around and I'm like, everybody drinks for like the most weirdest reasons. Like,
Yeah, the most
I
weird
go
reasons.
back and look at, last night we were looking at videos with my kids when they were babies. And I remember thinking I might've been having a drink at that day, like at a birthday party, or, like it was because birthday parties stressed me out. So I would have a drink instead of just being there for my kids. Like, so weird that we would do these things that we couldn't.
Do you ever have any picture with a beer in the hands or something like that?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. I mean, so almost my entire upbringing, if you look at any picture of me at nighttime, there will most likely be a wine glass, a beer, or something in my hand. And even to this day, like sometimes, I'll drink a non-alcoholic beer just so that I can feel like I'm, drinking as a crutch in socially awkward places. But yeah, it's still there. It's still a thing. It's still a weird crutch. Eventually that'll probably go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I was about to ask you, do you think you ever going to go back?
Absolutely not. So I used to smoke when I was younger. And I really enjoyed smoking. I enjoyed everything about the idea of smoking until I finished smoking and I smelled like an ashtray and my breath smelled like an ashtray and my fingers smelled like an ashtray. I didn't like the way I felt afterwards, right, with that.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. And so I just stopped. I just decided, like, I think a few more times I would smoke here and there, and then I would come back to, I really hate this.
Yeah.
It's how I feel with drinking. It's like if I go back to it, I don't even think that. I think if I drank today, which I'm not, but if I drank today, I think I would go back to that feeling of like, that's dumb. So I'm not even gonna do it. I'm over it.
All right.
I outgrew it.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
And speaking on social, because you are a regional manager, I know you're always traveling, you're always talking to branch managers and loan officers, meeting for happy hours or meetings. And it's very hard to choose not to drink in those situations. Do you felt that you lost friendship or relationships because of it?
No, I think more people think, like, want to hear the story of why I stopped. I think that's more of a thing than it is like, oh, I'm not going to be this guy's friend because he's not drinking or anything like that. I think in fact, I think it's more the opposite. I've had more people reach out to me through DM or through, and say, hey, I'm trying to stop, or people when they do want to stop, they'll come to me and tell me that, but then I'll see them later and they're drinking again. Okay. And then they don't want me to know. Like, it's like, I'm going to judge them or something. I don't care if people drink, but it's so funny. And I know this one guy that I was like, we had dinner and he was ordering a drink and I like kind of double take because he had come to me and said he wasn't going to drink anymore. So I was surprised. And he was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, but I was like, "No, I'm just curious. I was just curious because I thought you said you did. I don't care." But no, I don't think it. Socially, I'm over it. There was a point where I really was uncomfortable, probably for the first 9 months. If I went to a restaurant, the moment when I got into the restaurant to the moment that my food hit the table, that period of time I hated it. Tracy, I would just, don't talk to me. And she would try, and she knew I was distracted. Like, she's like, your eyes are everywhere. And I'm just like, because all these noises, I don't know how to cope with it because it was like overstimulation of my body that I didn't know how to cope with. And then we went to dinner the other night. We don't go to dinner often, but we went to dinner the other night and I was like super engaged with her and I had a really good time. And we sat at the bar and, I didn't even think twice about having a drink. I was over it. So I think you outgrow those triggers that you think, because like up until this year, I don't know that I ever had a dinner with Tracy, my wife, without drinking or without like being fully there, without having a little bit of a buzz or something. Like every dinner we had, I had a drink.
How long you guys been married though?
Of course you're going to ask me that.
Yeah, of course. I'm not putting in a stop.
We've been married for 15 years.
15 years. What is the date? The date? What was the time? Just kidding. Oh man, 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
Did she notice that? I mean, do you look like you have a problem? If you look back,
I don't think it was fair to her to live with me in that state. But I also think that Tracy was very much of I enjoy the idea of us going to a winery. I enjoy the idea of us having drinks with my friends. I enjoy the idea of us sitting around a fire having a glass of wine. I think all those things she romanticized about the idea of what people do when they drink. What I don't think was coming into focus with her was the aftermath of after that, what was happening, right? And so I think when she plays it out in her head, now she's like, oh, I'm so glad that you don't drink anymore. I mean, she was like, hated that if we went to dinner, she would drive us home. For me, I was like built-in designated driver, like this is amazing that you can drive. And I never understood, like, why are you mad? Like, you get to drive. Like, I'm
always driving.
So I never really understood it. But now I understand that it wasn't that she had to drive. It was that I wasn't present. And I realized that, and that's an entire journey in itself of that. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm getting there, and just being present in the moment, especially when there's high energy and high, stimulation happening around me, is to be fully present in that moment without having to drink.
Do you have any hacks that help you to be present?
I use this a lot. This is something that a therapist told me, but I haven't used it in high stimulation environments where it's really like clanking, loud noises. Because I can't even see through the noise. But in my day-to-day, a therapist told me to rub my two fingers together. And it kind of brings the attention back to being present. And so a lot of times I'll do that. Another thing that I do is if sometimes I'll be back to back in meetings, I'll just take like, even if it's 30 seconds of just doing like 4 deep breaths to just get present again before the next call. But that's what I do. Now, in terms of like how I manage that in my personal life, it's hard because I've always coped personally through drinking, and so I'm working through that. I'm working through what those hacks are.
Still figuring it out.
Yeah, but I'm only a year into it, and I think that I noticed in a year all the amazing things that have happened. But now it's like, now you take it a step further. You got to look at the areas of your life where you're not fully present, or you're still having a hard time. And I think one hack that I'll tell you that I'm practicing right now is looking in my wife's eyes, looking in people's eyes as I'm talking to them, because for the longest time, it was almost like maybe there was a shame there of like, I don't want you to see me. Don't look at me. I don't know if that's what it was. I haven't really nailed it down, but I think just starting to look into people's eyes when I'm talking to them on a personal level is big. There's these videos where there's these babies that their caretaker like won't look at them.
Oh, really?
And the babies like start to freak out, like, why aren't you looking at me?
Okay.
And they start to get really upset. And it's because I never realized that when you look in somebody's eyes, people want to be seen. And I think that if you're struggling with being seen, then you got to start with seeing the people that you're talking to, because if you both look away, it's going to manifest into something completely
It's just awkward
different.
at that point.
Yeah, it's not just awkward, but it's like you start to develop a bad habit with each other. That's just how you operate. And so one of the things that hacks, if you will, that I've been doing is just really taking a moment to look at Tracy's eyes when I'm talking to her, or when we're in the midst of just doing things. I'll take a moment, just look at her, and it goes a long way.
There you go. That's the superpower is right there this whole time.
It's a crazy
15
thing.
years.
But 50, yeah. I mean, well, yeah. And from a hack perspective, it feels weird to call it a hack, but I think it's one of the ways that we have to figure out how to reconnect after being so disconnected with your emotions for so many years.
It's a lot. It sounds like it's a big road to pursue. Like, I know you only have 1 year, which is already amazing just for making a decision. But from my understanding is when you stop drinking is because you're trying to now look at your feelings, look at your thoughts. But now you don't have that, so you have to look at your feelings. You have to look at your thoughts. So it sounds like a very long road. Do you felt any difference with your kids, or were they like one of the people that was in your corner to help you, to inspire you to stop drinking?
Yeah, I think my kids were a big inspiration for me to stop drinking as well. Outside of just all of the physical like reasons to stop, there were a few big rock moments where my son had seen me drink and was mimicking maybe how I was talking or acting, because he thought that was funny, or he associated that with being fun. Like he's saying that I'm having a good time, and that like that's maybe how people have good times. And so that kind of stuck with me. And so no matter what, I was already going to I shouldn't drink in front of my children. But even when I stopped drinking, I made it a point, and I think Tracy made it a point to tell them when we were buying like non-alcoholic beers that these are non-alcoholic. I'm not drinking. Because I didn't want them to associate like, hey, it's okay to drink in your normal day-to-day life. And at some point I need to have the conversation with them, like why I stopped drinking, so that they don't make the same mistake that I made. But how do I get along with my kids? I mean, I've always been really present with my children, but I do feel like the fog's lifted and it gives me an opportunity to see them in a different way and talk to them in a different way. But also I'm not hungover. So even in the slightest bit hungover, it's weird, man. It's a weird thing to live life. I used to plan my weekends or my trips with a hangover in mind. Like, oh, well, I don't want to plan that because I know I don't want to plan this thing happening during this time of this vacation because I know I'll probably need some recovery time.
Oh, okay.
So I would always plan things
you
like later in the afternoon.
Which drink you're going to have and what you're going to feel after.
And I still kind of think about that sometimes, like, oh, I don't want to do that because I'll probably still be hungover. I don't have to do that anymore. It's like the amount of time that I get back from not drinking has been amazing. So I don't really miss it. Like, I missed the romance of the pouring of the drink and those sort of things, but I don't really miss that not being present and that fog and the hangovers. I don't miss that at all. When I think back to that, it's been a year that I haven't drank. I never intended it to be that long journey or for it to be all the things that happen. I just wanted to start one day. Like if I can get through today, then I was going to be okay. And then the next day, if I could just get through today, I'll be okay. And that turned into, I don't think I'm going to drink. I'm kind of over it. And then the biggest hack of sticking to it was I posted it on social media. Because I am not going to be that guy that says I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
And I start drinking again. Like, I don't know, but I shouldn't care about what people think, but I care about what people think. And if people see me drinking again after I did that post and inspired people, then I feel like I would be letting myself down and them down. And I'm just not going to do it. But I will tell you that if you want to not do something or you want to accomplish something, go tell the world. And then you got an immense amount of pressure to hold yourself to it.
Yeah, now they're going to hold you accountable.
Now it's accountability.
You can't run away from that.
Man, and I will tell you, like, I got to give credit to this mastermind that I was in, the Forward Mastermind, because Chris Doe and Neil Dingra came out and said, what is the one thing you're most ashamed of? And how do you talk about it?
Okay.
And they put us into groups, and I was like, I have nothing.
Nothing to be ashamed of? Or?
Nothing that I'm going to share that I'm ashamed
Nothing you're going
to
share,
And then I realized that I was really ashamed of who I had been. And I got partnered with Trevor York, who if I had not been partnered with him, I think I would have pretended I had a work call to get to and hid from everybody and not participated. But he videotaped me talking about it. He started crying. And I was like, wow, like, I can't believe my story or this thing that I'm kind of like over. I felt like I was over the hump at the time, was impacting somebody. And I think that was even in October. It was like not that many months after. And, you know, I really thank him for capturing that. I still have the video. I think I posted it on TikTok. I don't think I ever posted it anywhere else, but it was really like a moment for me that I can thank him for capturing it and thank that being a part of that mastermind. But here's the thing. That mastermind introduced me to Sean Kaplan. That mastermind introduced me to Thomas Bepko. Got me to hear about how to build a brand around your shame and not to be ashamed of your shame.
Yes.
What does Chris Doe say? Instead of walking around with a hole, to walk around as a whole person.
A human with a hole, but a whole human.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. That's that's the quote. And you know, that's how I felt. I felt like I was walking around with a hole until I realized that I was a whole person. And so those things really stepped out. But I think being a part of that mastermind changed my life.
I think that's just amazing. I mean, you went for the point that you don't want to share your most embarrassed moment to realize you are actually touching people. And you could be touching people this whole time.
Well, that was the hardest thing about doing this. Like, somebody had pulled me aside and said, you know, what's your breakthrough moment? And I said, oh, well, I did one, you know, it was like a 10-minute one, and I didn't share anything on that one. In fact, let's take that down. Dump it. It's a dumb one. Yeah. But anyway, like, I just wanted to be real. If I ask people to come on the podcast to be real about their vulnerabilities, I have to start with me.
Yes.
And I needed to talk about it. And I'm more important, like, I think while I'll give people credit, like Trevor and Thomas and Sean and Ricky and Neil and all those people, I think the person that I owe it all to is Tracy, because she had to endure the embarrassment. You know, like I have ruined so many situations for her out of being just embarrassed with me. Like, we'll go to a dinner and she just feels like that it's such an embarrassing situation because I'm not at all engaged, because I'm just drinking, and feeling like she has to apologize for me because if I don't want to be in a situation, I won't be. And so then I would just get slogged. But I didn't realize that. I realize it now. I just didn't realize it then. But she had to endure way too much. And I don't think it was fair for her to have to live like that. And I tell her that. I said I don't think it was. I've told her so many times how I don't feel like it was fair that she had to put up with that.
That's
as a spouse.
Amazing. Yeah. Did she ever told you that, or you just realized after you stopped drinking?
I think she's told me, like, in so many ways. Why can't you just be cool?
Yeah.
Like, why can't you? I don't think she realized that because she can drink and not get drunk. She can drink a drink and two and be like,
I'm fine for the night. Yeah.
That's not me.
I see.
I'm gonna burn the house down, you know?
Yeah.
And so for me it was different. I had to just stop because I didn't have that moment. And maybe there were times I did.
Okay.
Like I can go to a work event.
Yeah.
And have 3 drinks and know to be okay. I can go to a
drive yourself back.
Have 3 drinks and be sloshed because emotionally I don't want to be there. At work, I knew I had to be there.
You have to be there, right?
Yeah. For work, I didn't have. For non-work stuff, I didn't have to. So therefore, my body was like shutting down. So, imagine the stress of having to. When can I drink? How much can I drink? And
what drinks are you gonna have?
And all that, man. I just all that packaged up and shipped out. I don't have to deal with it. Overnight.
Don't miss anymore.
I do not miss it anymore.
There we go. Going to your point of you realize you cannot just have 1 or 2 drinks. That was another question I was about to ask. If you have any thought of why don't I just drink in moderation?
Yeah, I would love to drink in moderation.
Yeah,
I would love, but this is how my brain works. I'm gonna have 1 drink, and I have 1, and after 1, I feel amazing. So why not 2?
Why not
then
2?
I have 2. I'm like, I'll just have 2, and then I feel even more amazing. And then I have 3, and then rationale is gone, and then you're down the path of 4 or 5, and it's not always like that. But even if it was like that for once out of a year, it was too much, and therefore
I see.
It just wasn't worth it. And as I get older, my hangovers were worse. Like my hangovers were 2-day hangovers and not 1 day.
Oh, wow.
But also, I look back at pictures and I'm completely bloated. I'm completely look like a different person. And all in, man, nothing about drinking was good for me.
All right, there we go. Do you have any hack when you go traveling with your family on vacation?
I was really worried about that. We go to Mexico a lot, so my biggest, like one of the main things that I loved about Mexico was having really good tequila, having beer, ice cold beer with chips and guac. Like all those things are out. However, my hack, if you will, was as soon as we land there, if you're in Cabo, there's a store right outside the airport and they serve non-alcoholic beers. So I stop in there.
Okay. I
grab like a 12-pack of, they have Tecate, which I haven't found it here. They have non-alcoholic Tecates, and then I just drink those. And honestly, I can only drink like maybe 2 of them before I start to feel really bloated. And I don't have the effect of, but when you crack one open and you drink that, for me, it's fine. There's some purists that are like, never even do those. I'm not one of those guys. Even if there's 0.05% alcohol, I don't care. I'm going to drink a non-alcoholic beer. And because I know that it's not going to lead me to drinking a real beer. But that's for me. This is not medical advice. This is Chris advice on what worked for me.
Okay.
But I was able to do this without going to rehab. I drank 35 years, I don't know, or more, and am able to function without going to rehab.
All right.
There's something to be said about that, but it was a commitment, and it was a commitment to my family, a commitment to myself, and then I posted it, told everybody, and I was like, I can't let people down at this point.
There you go. So for the people that are watching or listening, and they're struggling with deciding if they're gonna stop drinking or not, what would you say for the person?
Man, I want so bad to help those people.
Yeah. But
I can't. That's not what I do for a living. That's not. I can't get sucked into it, and I can't be led down. Like I had a mentor who was my mentor for many, many, many years, and he was a functioning alcoholic. In fact, I think the reason that I doubled down on drinking was because of him, just being in the presence and watching how he was able to function as a high-performing alcoholic and thinking like, well, if he can do it, I can do that too. And he's dead now.
Oh, really?
And I knew I'd get that call like eventually he's going to die over this.
It was alcohol related?
I don't know. I don't know what it was related. It was a weird form of cancer, but I know alcohol had to be related.
It wasn't not helping. There was
no way that it was not. There was nobody who heard about his death did not think that it had anything, like it was not an alcoholic thing, right? But the letdown of this person in my life, he didn't show up to my wedding. He was a groomsman. He didn't show up. He got too drunk. Just things over and over, just to let down. So if somebody's wanting to stop, there has to be a purpose to stop in their life, and they have to be so willing to do it that they just stop. Now, I think there's chemically people can't do that, and therefore they need to seek medical attention, because I think people go through like withdrawal from alcohol, which can be dangerous apparently. Yes. So I can't give people advice on that. But if you're like a recreational drinker and you want to stop, then hang around people who have stopped. Like, reach out to me and I'll be your friend. There's somebody who had posted about it the other day, and I DM'd them because I was like, hey, if you just want to talk about it, I got you, because I do want to be a support mechanism for people, but I can't be the guy out there like preaching to stop drink, because man, there are people who can do it in moderation and do it well. Yeah. My wife's one of them. Yeah. I'm just not. And for the people that are not, that want to stop, then so get a support group with you that make living life look cool. Yeah. Sean's life looked cool. Yeah. Bepko's life looked cool. I was like, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Do you feel a little more freedom right now?
I feel, it's a great question. And yes, I do feel free. I do feel like I am not tied to the liquor cabinet that I used to think about so much. Like, what am I going to drink? I'm not tied to that anymore. I don't, Yeah. I got more other things to put that brain space.
On your day-to-day life, what happened to you that triggers you to want to have a drink?
It's changed. It used to be, if I was cooking an Italian dinner, I wanted to drink wine. If I was grilling, I had to have a beer. If I went to a restaurant, I had to have a drink. All that went away. And so the triggers, something happened recently, and I told Tracy, man, it's times like, I know what it was. So last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, I had an entire team quit on me. Oh, really? Okay. They just quit. I just hired them, and they became my number one team in 1 month. Oh, damn. And then they quit. Yeah, that hurts. And then the following Friday, I rehired them all back. Oh, really? Right. So I went 7 days. I went through a roller coaster of, emotion. And I got home after I did the deal. And I was like, man, now's the time that I wish I could have a drink, right? Yeah. And she's like, why? Why do you even say that? I said, I'm not going to. I just remember that these were the times that I would have celebrated. And you said champagne. I was thinking whiskey, but I was like, but she's like, but then you'd feel like crap. I said, I know, I'm not. It's just that moment. And she thinks it's like a dangerous thought, and I don't. I'm just like, it's like an old friend that I no longer have, that I'm okay with. They're dead. They're dead and gone. And that's a part, but I enjoyed the times that we had, and they weren't all bad. There were a lot of really good times for me drinking, but it was time. Okay, it was time to separate from that friend.
Do you remember any bad times?
Many
bad decisions.
Many bad decisions. I've been arrested twice, 3 times. I've been arrested 3 times for drinking.
Any of those like driving or just in public?
Yeah, I'm not condoning this whatsoever, but I have 2 DUIs. I've gone to jail for it. I got put in a drunk tank one time in California. Yeah, man. I mean, I've been to jail 3 times for drinking, and that's not enough for me. No, it was not enough. Really? Yeah. Uber got introduced, and I was like, well, there's Uber. That solves that problem.
I don't need to drive anymore. Yeah.
So no, but that was it was terrible that I let that happen. It's embarrassing that I let it happen. But it's the story.
But also, it's part of your journey.
It's a part of the journey. It was really stupid that I got myself in those situations.
Yeah, I think understand and recognize that it's part of the journey. Whatever embarrassing thing that ever happened because of alcohol, that's going to be one of the steps to keep it higher and not decide to go back and let of advancing better choices.
Let me add this. Like, normally we have been doing these podcasts and never asked for anything. But if this podcast touched you in any way, shape, or form, or if you're listening to this and your name was mentioned in the podcast, all I'm going to ask you to do is just take a snapshot of this and post it in your Instagram and tag Breakthrough Pod Official, because we need as much support on this podcast as you could possibly give. And then if you really were touched by it, DM me, and I'd love to talk to you about my journey and maybe help you with yours. And if you really, really loved it, then give us a 5-star and subscribe to this podcast, and we will continue to share breakthrough moments of people's lives in hopes that you get to change yours for the better.
Amazing.
Thank you, brother, for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This was really good. You did an amazing job, and I appreciate you allowing me to tell my story.
Absolutely. So, I was very excited and very curious with all of that. So it was very inspiring. Thank you.
Love it.